Good evening. It is April 9th, I believe.
Yeah.
We are at the Hunter Hudson Board of Ed meeting. We are currently in session. Sorry. We're currently in session. We just moved to public. Can I please have, can everybody rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I said, we are presently in session. Our first order of business is to get our agenda in order. Can I get a motion to approve it as presented? Okay. Are there any items that people would like pulled?
You pulled the
There is
donations?
That's
So
always
is-
pulled, it's not in the consent agenda anymore. Is the, it's the, which is the new one, the new one personnel?
Yeah, accept it and then answer.
Okay, then, not having anything pulled, can I get a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda? All those in favor? Um,
Okay, we have by way of that vote, the Board of Education has welcomed our newest family member to Hendrick Hudson. We are very pleased that we have hired our new principal for Furnace Woods. And I'll let Alice Gottlieb, who led the search process, briefly talk about the interview process, and then I'm going to read a statement, and then we will welcome our special guest.
Thank you, and welcome, Cindy. This starts with a paper search on OLAS, and we had 7 pages of applicants with 20 on the page, so that's about 140 applicants. I read through them. I culled about 30 from there, and Joe and I looked at those resumes together. Then we had about 15 people come to meet with Joe and with me for 40-minute interviews. Cindy, you did that. And from that, we sent, I believe, 7 candidates to a panel of, it seemed like thousands in that room, but a panel of 22 very interested parents, teachers, administrators, representing the Furnace Woods School. And from that, we sent 2 of the 7 candidates on to the superintendent. The superintendent visited Pleasantville Elementary School and watched Cindy at work. And she emerged as our strongest candidate. And we're very pleased and very proud to welcome her to Hendrick Hudson. I have to say, one of our Frank G. Lindsay teachers' daughter is a teacher in Cindy's current building, and the report I got back from this teacher was, "You took our Cindy." So I like hearing that.
I'll read a statement now. I've been fortunate, spent a couple hours with Cindy through the interview process. As Alice said, we did a site visit. Enrique joined me on the site visit, and it was an incredible experience. So I wanted to read this comment so the board and the community understands a little background to Cindy Kramer. This was written by her principal Peggy Galati. Cindy and I have been co-piloting the administrative team at the Bedford Road Elementary School in Pleasantville for 8 years. The road we have traveled to reach this point has been extremely fulfilling and speaks volumes for Cindy as a person and administrator. Many years ago, Cindy and I were both finalists for the principal's position. And in true Cindy fashion, her dedication and commitment to educating children socially, emotionally, and academically outweighed the importance of title or status. Subsequently, I was appointed the principal, but was extremely fortunate to have Cindy appointed as the assistant principal, and we have been a team ever since. Cindy is bright, articulate, creative, and a knowledgeable leader who's an effective team member. She's highly respected by our community, parents, students, colleagues, and engenders passion and enthusiasm with those with whom she works. Her traits and strengths are evident in all that she does, and every decision she makes is to benefit students. She leads by example and leaves no stone unturned when setting goals for an elementary instructional program, and her in-depth knowledge of curriculum and instruction encompasses the belief that all children can learn and grow making her an outstanding elementary administrator. As her friend and colleague, I know this is Cindy's time to lead her own school. Pleasantville, please know that Furnace Woods Elementary School is extremely fortunate to have such a talented administrator and leader. For the past 8 years, Cindy has made valuable contributions to Pleasantville, and her legacy will continue to be measured by the children whose lives she has touched each and every day. I talked to Peggy Galati today and asked her to prepare something. I didn't know this was what she would prepare. But Peggy teared up when I asked her to do it. She said it's a very fitting tribute and sort of premature farewell to Cindy. But when Enrique and I were there, it was very clear that they co-piloted that school. So much so, you hear about shared decision-making and all the buzzwords. And Enrique and I are in the principal's office, Peggy's office, and she led with, Cindy and I have a shared leadership model. And we have heard those buzzwords before, and we said, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? And Peggy turned around and said, well, look at that. And in the other side, or on the other side of the principal's office, was Cindy's desk, telephone, computer, and I said, what? What just happened? She goes, we share an office. And that is a very physical and sort of abrupt message that they sent in Pleasantville about shared leadership and collaboration. And it was at that point, maybe 10 minutes into our visit, we knew we were making the right choice. So Helene Kane is here, who we are also celebrating, but we will celebrate in more formal fashion her 18 years with the district. So I'd like to invite Cindy up if you'd like to say something, and we have a welcome gift for you. So I'll let you go first.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very, very much for this opportunity. Thank you to the board and Alice and Joe, who walked me through this process. I've enjoyed it, every minute of it, believe it or not, even the committee of 22 people staring at me for our 45 minutes. But everything I've learned about the district just shows me more and more that this is going to be a great fit, and I'm so excited, so thrilled to be here. It's going to be very hard to leave Bedford Road and Pleasantville, as you heard, but I'm ready, and I'm excited, and I look forward to working with everyone. So thank you very much.
You want to co-present? Well, we'll do the socks first. So, as I understand, you wore some mismatched socks to your committee.
I brought some mismatched
you
socks
didn't wear
because
them.
it was mismatched sock day at Furnace Woods.
All right. Well, we'll need to, and every Friday for me personally.
Okay.
So here are some mismatched socks for you, and Helene has a.
Oh, I have lots
Oh,
of
you have.
things.
Oh, all right. Well, this is a welcome Furnace Woods
Great.
T-shirt. So you are now part of the family, and Helene, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
I think this is a beautiful thing that Cindy is here and we're going to work together till the end of the school year, meet several times. I met Cindy on the phone and through email, and I just know that it's going to work. I really do. Have a really good feeling about the way she works with people. So, okay, let's see what we have for you. This is a Furnace Woods School magnet, which can go on your refrigerator or on the back of your car. This is a Furnace Woods School 2014 We Have Spirit birthday. Thank you. That was during that week.
Oh, right, yes, it was good.
And this is a Furnace Woods School bus teaching. So we're all set.
Cindy and Helene have worked out a number of dates throughout the remainder of the school year for Cindy to meet with faculty and staff, a PTA meeting in May. So they will be able to spend a lot of meaningful time together, passing the torch and learning. And that was a priority of the board when we did the search. We wanted to get out there early and identify a candidate, to take the best people off the market, but also to provide a lot of time. 18 years is an incredible track record, and there's a lot of institutional knowledge, and we want to capture as much of that time as possible. So when Cindy comes in on July 1st officially, she knows where the school is, she knows where the school wants to go. and that transition will hopefully be much smoother for everybody. So we're glad you joined us. Welcome. All right, great.
On behalf of the board, welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to all the people in the audience that served on that giant committee, because there were a lot. And it really helped to listen to everybody and get an idea of what the fit was and how it was. And it really impressed many of us when she walked in with her own mismatched socks and her own hat that day. Because she had been reading about what the school was about and what, she had done her homework, and so that was important. So thank you. Thank you to everyone for serving on the committee, too. Thank you.
To those of you who are from Furnace Woods, you want to leave now. You're welcome to stay, but quite often everyone feels awkward getting up and leaving while we're talking. So if you want to just go, feel free. You're welcome to stay too.
But no, thank you.
Exactly. It's like, smart.
Thanks for the help.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
Thanks.
That brings us to the next item, was the acceptance of donations, and we have 3 separate items. One is the donation to the Barbara Katzenstein Scholarship Fund, which is for special ed summer camp, which is, again, it's tremendous support. A donation for Furnace Woods Elementary School. It would appear that a parent, I'm guessing it's a matching fund, because New York Life, it is the matching gift program. So to that parent, thank you very much. And the Hudson Dance and Tumble Center made a donation of $3,040 to the Hendrick Hudson High School
Wow.
for utilization improvements to the auditorium. That I'm assuming had to do with the performance that was here the other night?
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you very much to Hudson Dance and Tumble. I mean, I know it's our kids, but we appreciate your giving back. It's a wonderful thing, and we will use it. We will use it in good health.
It's really cool.
So thank you very much. Can I get a motion to approve these 3 donations?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to audience comments. Okay. Superintendent's report.
I'm going to keep this brief, but as the board and the community know, we received a very significant grant in September for our middle school and high school to study a career pathway model. And career pathway model is an opportunity to develop elective courses in conjunction with business needs in our community. We've been working with our high school and middle school administration and trying to identify what opportunities our kids have, particularly in high school, to almost major in something, to put together a group of electives so when kids finish in 12th grade, they have a really good baseline knowledge in STEM or in business or in the arts. Part of the grant was a trip to Nashville. And a number of years ago, the Nashville Public Schools were in really tough shape. They were in tough shape financially, academically, behaviorally, all sorts of things, typical inner city school issues. And what they did is they embraced the academy structure of revitalizing and revamping their 12 high schools so that students had a career focus and an academic focus by the end of 9th grade. And what we know about relevance and what we know about keeping kids connected is learning has to make sense, it has to connect to the real world, and students are going to invest more in their education. 5 of us went to Nashville under the funding of the grant, and we are preparing a more thorough review or update for the board on what we learned and what we would like to do. But the short of it is we're going to begin very formal partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce and with other economic groups in our county to really understand what the needs are in terms of creating jobs in our region, what the brain drain impact has had, what property taxes, the impact of property taxes on businesses, so that in the high school and middle school we could build some elective programs that will prepare kids for emerging job markets in our own backyard, perhaps. So it's exciting work. The business community is really interested to learn more about what's going on in schools. Obviously, we are very interested to know what the emerging job trends and employment trends are in our community. So wanted to give you a brief update on our trip, but we'll have a more formal presentation. Spring sports are in full swing, and we are not having a conversation about fields. Yeah, so far they're holding up. Our Frank G. Field is getting a little spotty and muddy, but is certainly not what I believe it was last year, so that's good news, and continue to hope for dry weather. Last Saturday, two major events in our district. A number of musicians, hundreds of musicians performed at the Paramount and Peekskill with Daisy Joplin, which was a great opportunity for our kids to perform with a professional musician. And I know that there was also a fundraiser through Furnace Woods for one of our staff members that was held in
Thomas Fitzgerald
Fund.
was a student who was here 10 years, who passed away about 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
so the annual fundraiser, which will benefit one of our staff members. So we are busy. Kids are busy. We're preparing for AP exams, which will happen in about 1 month, and then do the quick turnaround and get ready for Regents exams. We're down to really about 7 weeks of real instruction left, and before you know it, we'll be shaking hands and crying when our graduates cross the stage. So it has gone by quickly, that is for sure.
Absolutely.
And with that, I'll let us get into our presentations.
Just before that, there are under committee reports. There's Finance Committee, but those will be discussed in Finance, will be discussed in our presentations. Were there any other committees that you'd like to give an update on?
Barbara and I went to the BVPTA as liaisons the other night, and one thing that came up, all of the elementary schools have a scholarship for graduating seniors, and it's advertised and out there. They haven't received very many applicants yet. When's the deadline, Barbara?
I believe at the end of April.
And they need a less than last minute essay. I think there's language in the grant that it has to be a well-written essay, but
It's PTA funded, and basically the idea is to, it just how your experience at BV, all three schools do it, Furnace Woods and Frank G. Lindsay, how it, how it made you the student that you are and got you to where you are in the high school. It's, all three schools do it. It's a wonderful thing, and we're very grateful to the PTAs for yet one more thing that they do for our students.
how much is it?
It depends on, I'm not sure anymore. I know
can't remember if it was-
fluctuates.
500 of Furnace Woods.
That's each, I know each school's,
I think
it
that was
seems to
about-
have changed a little. So, all right, that would be it.
And
So,
at Frank G. Lindsay, PTA, we've been giving out the Golden Lion Awards, which is very nice when they have their meetings. And Mr. Hochreiter and I and Beth Gruber have gone out and spoken to the senior citizens about the budget, and we will continue to do that this coming month as well.
okay. All right, thank you very much. And that brings us to our first presentation, which would be the budget review of revenue and tax implications.
Hello, everyone. We are at the end of another budget season, so we all are happy.
So soon?
Yes. And we're even happier this time because our tax is either going to go down or it's going to increase only 0.2%. So we must be very happy for that. I wish my district would do the same. Anyway, can you put the presentation, please? Thank you. Okay. Next one, please. Budget. So our budget, our proposed budget for this year is $73.3 million. That will be a 1.73% increase compared to last year. That will bring us to a tax levy of $40,948,000, which is a tax levy increase of 0.03% or $12,000 compared to last year. The tax rate as of today, because as you know, the total assessed value for our district, we don't get it on for the Peekskill part of our district. We don't get it until May, and then Portland we don't get it until August. But if the assessment stays the same, town of Portland will have a 0.2% increase in their taxes, which means that if your house is the average house with an assessed value of $7,700, your taxes will increase $11 a year, so less than $1 a month. And if you are the lucky one from city of Peekskill, your taxes will decrease about $41 in average. Our non-tax revenue, which is state aid, pilots, other income, and fund balance, will be $32 million, which is an increase of close to 3.96%. This year, our tax cap is $40,948,748. So we are going to be under the cap by $748. Next one, please. So here we go. Like I said, the city of Peekskill, for example, last year, a house with an assessed value of $7,700 last year paid $1,905 in school taxes. This year, they will pay, last year $1,946. This year, they will pay $1,905, which is a decrease of $41. And then in the town of Portland, last year, they paid $5,768. This year, they will pay $5,780, an increase of a little bit more than $11, a rounding error. Next. By law, I need to show you the expenses by category, and I think that even if it were not law, we should be very proud to show this, because we are here to teach the children, and our instructional budget represents over 81% of the money that we spend. That means that 81.5% of our budget goes directly to the programs for the children. Then the administrative portion is the lowest part that I cannot see well, but it's about 6.2%. And then the capital portion that includes all our facilities, debt, that represents 12.1%. So you know, in the state of New York, the instructional part in average represents about 72 to 73%. So we are way above the average on the portion of your money that goes to the children rather than the other parts of the district. Next. We also, like every year, we're going to have a post proposition that you'll have a chance to vote for. And as you know, we do post propositions on a yearly basis, so we can cycle our old buses. We have a cycling period for our buses, and this year, what we are presenting to the to the community is the potential to replace 5 vehicles. We're going to buy 2 70 passenger buses. These will be the last 2 conventionals that we'll buy in our first cycle. The next, we're also going to buy 2 passenger vans, 1 suburban SUV, and then we're also asking to add 1 vehicle for the facilities and grounds. These vehicles will be for sanding, for transporting equipment. And also we want to add some cameras into those buses that they don't have cameras. And we're asking the community to vote for a bus proposition that will be up to $525,000, which is very similar than last year. And that's what you'll have in the to vote in May, what is it, May 20? In May 20. And now we'll
There will
hear.
also be 2 board members and the library budget.
And also you'll be able to vote for the library budget and for 2 board members, Barbara
And Charles.
and Charles. Both are going to be also.
There may be another candidate. We don't know yet.
We don't know.
That's-
So
it's
far,
not
we
time
don't
yet.
know. So far, we have 2 candidates, so their names will be in the boxes. So we might have more, we might not have more, but please go and vote for whomever you want.
There you go. I'm going to deviate slightly. Normally, we have the audience comments at the very end, but just since you're done, if there's any questions before we vote on this budget? If anybody has any? Okay. Then, thanks, Amy.
You need to vote, so.
Yes, we were just about to. So, can I get a motion to approve this?
Wait, what's Marion asking?
I'm just asking, are these in the library if the public wants to?
Yes.
Yes.
look at them? Okay,
Yes.
so there are
You
line by
were saying
line.
where did you?
Every building has it, central office has it, the public library has it, every principal has it, every board member has it. Who else?
The library will get it tomorrow. I didn't
I'm
have a chance
sorry.
to- Everybody,
The-
district clerk,
District clerk,
all
central
administrators.
It's here it's at the district office if people, like
Do we have it online
Somebody's-
too? Do we have it?
Is it on,
Yeah,
well,
we
yeah,
should
Yes,
have it
it
online.
is.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is our line by line.
so it's
Where is it on
Julie.
the website,
I think it's underneath the board tab.
under board budget?
I believe that's where it is, yeah.
Is a PDF?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion if anybody, I'm sorry, does anybody have any questions regarding this budget? If not, may I get a motion to approve it? The budget that will be presented on the ballot on May 20th.
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Diane. I know Enrique didn't do it alone.
We didn't
All right.
mention that we should.
The other, since we're changing things around a little bit, if on the agenda, we actually have the items, the special ed program after the discussion of the SRO, we're just going to swap them and do the special ed program review first. So,
Yes, earlier in our academic year, with some transition in the leadership in our pupil personnel and special ed office, we wanted to have a third party, a fresh set of eyes, look at our program. And this conversation and review that Judy Hirschhorn, who is here as a consultant on behalf of BOCES, her review is the systems, the structures, the communication, the sort of operations of the department. An academic review, which this board talked about a couple weeks ago, will be forthcoming, as well as goals for the department and for those students that receive special education services. So this conversation is a look at the systems and the structures of our department. And with that, I will welcome Judy Hirschhorn to the Board of Education meeting. So
Thank you
welcome,
very
Judy.
much. Okay, well, the review was initiated by the Superintendent of Schools and the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education. and as the superintendent indicated, there were 3 broad areas of focus during the review. It was the operation of the special education office, roles and responsibilities within that office, the fiscal management within special education, and the current special education programmatic offerings within the district. The review process included a review of documents, interviews with various subgroups, and an analysis of achievement of students with disabilities within the Hendrick Hudson School District and with similar schools within the Lower Hudson Valley, and I'll get to that a little later. In terms of the documents that were reviewed, all of the what are called the VR reports or verification reports from SED, the most recent ones. These are reports that look at a number of aspects of special ed, such as placement of preschool and school-age children, students with disabilities, such as their placement in LRE, and those placements are looked at based on age, gender, disability, race, et cetera. There's a whole variety of ways that information is assessed. And those reports, every school district does those reports throughout the year, every year, so that it's a good initial way to take a look at a district. Also, I looked at things like the CSE referral and classification rates, teacher schedules, the Hendrick Hudson School District report cards on the SED website. And basically, in terms of the report cards, I was looking at the results of the state and the region's examinations and the diploma status of students with disabilities. And then I took a look at the report cards for quote-unquote similar districts, and I use that in quotes. In 2006, the State Ed Department came out with a listing of comparable districts for every district, so that if you wanted to compare performance of students, you could do it to comparable districts. And you certainly can get into heated discussions about what are similar districts. But I think the important thing to recognize here is if you're looking at the achievement of students with disabilities, you cannot really compare them to non-disabled children within the district. You really need to compare them to students with disabilities in similar districts. And so I took a look at that. When we get into that a little later on, I'll explain why I did it over a number of years. I did take a look at 21 randomly selected IEPs.
There was one thing that kind of intrigued me was that our elementary schools were looked at next to different schools, and so is that, you're going to get to
I don't make apologies for SED's methodology.
No,
But
I
yes,
just-
they did compare the different, 2 elementary schools were compared to other elementary schools, and then 1 was compared to a whole different set of elementary schools. Again, it's a way of looking and making comparisons. It's particularly important when you're looking at the elementary level at the state tests, because the state tests themselves have varied so, and I'm not a defender of the state tests, but the state test is the same here as it is in Pleasantville, as it is in Yorktown, so that if everybody's performance for students with disabilities falls in a particular year, then you know that it's a result of the test and not the particular cohort. So yes, I make no apologies for those. And you can come up with your own, probably better than theirs. I also took a look at the Fiscal Accountability Supplement. Those are reports that are available online from SED. The one-to-one aid listing, and the financial condition report that the district had done. It ended in June of 2013. And the reports I looked at were the most current that are publicly available. So these are the ones that are online for SED. SED is somewhat slow sometimes in getting these things up. I also conducted interviews, both individually and in small group, with representatives from a variety of groups from the administration of the special ed office, principals, assistant principals, special educators, general educators, social workers, school psychologists, speech therapists, guidance counselors, physical therapists, occupational therapists, CODAs, the special ed office staff, Board of Education members, and parents. And for those of you who've been in the district a while, you may remember that a different kind of a review was done a number of years ago by Karen Geek, looked at very different kinds of things and different kinds of methodology. So that's why I thought it was important to explain what I did. Let me start off by saying the things that struck me as being real strengths in the district. And that is, there was a very, very strong sense of a real commitment to provide a quality program. I can't walk and chew gum. For students with disabilities. And in fact, after some initial explanations, I frequently heard how impressed staff were of the district's willingness to take a look at its own program. I found the building principals to be very knowledgeable about special education services within their building and the academic performance of the students with disabilities. And overall, special educators felt supported by their building principals. Secondly, the district is committed to meeting the needs of students in the general ed setting, and as a result does not over-identify students for special education. I took a look at, compared Hendrick Hudson both to New York State and the United States. The 2011-12 classification rate in Hendrick Hudson was 11.4. New York State was 12.8, and the US was 13.2. So that is to be commended. And there are a number of factors that came up as contributing to this. The district has implemented a response to intervention program that attempts to intervene early on with students who struggle. The ICT program has been able to provide in-class support without referrals to special education. And the Special Education Administration has been providing training to teachers on topics such as literacy, IEP development, management of behavior, which all contribute to managing the referral rate. Number 3, the district is committed to meeting the needs of students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. And the state ed measures this, by looking at the percentage of students who are classified who spend 80% or more of their day within a general ed setting. And the district has been I took a look from 2007 to 2012, and each year has been increasing the percentage of students who are spending the majority of their day in the regular ed setting. And this is, the last rate figure was 63.1%, and that is above the New York State target, which is 60%. So the district is to be commended for that. I found the staff in the special ed office to be hardworking and open to improving the organization and efficiency of their office. And I think that's a very important, it's not enough to be just hardworking, you also have to be willing to say it's time to move on and move into a better way of operating, and I found universally they were open to that. And a striking strength of the district was the development of the ABC program. It's well designed and well implemented. And the creation of a new special education program is a complex task requiring thorough planning and careful implementation. Students who were potential candidates for the program were observed and their needs clearly identified. District worked with the parents of these children so that the parents felt comfortable returning their children to the district. Staffing levels are appropriate to the needs of the student, and the district was able to hire highly qualified individuals to fill the positions. An autism consultant and a BCBA work as part of the program, providing parent training and training for program staff. Despite being in existence for a short period of time, this program has earned an outstanding reputation and is well respected by the parents in the community. And the district and staff should be proud of their accomplishments within this program. And finally, the district continues to examine ways to ensure that the ICT program meets the needs of the students and the staff participating in the program. This is tricky. It's a co-teach program existing in the age of state tests and Common Core presents a lot of challenges to staff. And I think that the district has been working hard. Continued work is clearly going to be necessary. But I think that there was great effort across the board in making sure that that program operates to the maximum extent possible. Okay, recommendations. In terms of the special education office, my recommendation would be, it's very ironic when you look at this, and I have a long enough memory to kind of know the history of it a bit. The people call it the special ed office, and yet the two administrators are director of PPS and an assistant director of PPS. I would imagine, if my memory serves me correctly, it started off as a PPS office, and for those of you who are not familiar with pupil personnel services, it tends to be much more expansive than special ed. Special ed falls under that umbrella, but it tends to include remediation, ESL, sometimes health services. I think that it probably started out as a PPS office, and as special ed became more time-consuming, those other aspects of the job kind of fell in other ways. And I think it may be time to go back and look at that again. In terms of doing that, I think it's also necessary to look at moving certain responsibilities out of that office. And the one in particular that I would recommend is Section 504. For those of you who are not familiar with Section 504, the way I differentiate that from special education is Section 504 refers to students with disabilities who require general ed to do something differently, some accommodation or modification. To me, that is best served in the buildings, and I think 504 may have oversight from PPS, but I think the day-to-day operations need to be held in the buildings. I think then it gives the opportunity to move that office into a true PPS model, providing oversight for prevention, remediation, pre-referral services, along with the shifting of the 504 responsibilities to building staff. There can be a great deal of overlap between all of these services, and I think we spent a lot of time in the past differentiating. I think it's time, just as the kids have rejoined general ed, I think it's time to stop differentiating special ed as a separate system. It's not a separate system anymore. The ICT program is a perfect example of that. It exists within regular ed. And I think students are best served. If you look at the vast majority of students with disabilities, they start in remedial services. And so for one office to have oversight over that whole experience for students, I think is a more efficient responsibility. I also think, and many of the things that special ed administrators do in terms of training would be appropriate for staff in RTI, in ESL. It's not so terribly different. And I think it's a much more efficient system. So how do you do that? Well, I think one of the problems that's faced, and it's not unique to Hendrick Hudson, with the current staffing, administrative staffing, is that come annual review time, you lose your two administrators. They're in CSE and 504 meetings all day, every day. And we don't do staff training just half the year till annual reviews start. Somebody needs to be providing oversight. So my recommendation, and it's purely that, is that the district consider a PPS director who does not chair meetings, who is available to principals and staff year-round. And then the conversion of roles for an elementary supervisor of special ed and a secondary supervisor of special ed. I think one of the challenges as a former special ed director was I was responsible to know about early intervention, 5-year-olds with disabilities, all the way up to 21-year-olds. And when you look at things like Common Core and the learning standards, it's a broad base that virtually nobody else in the district has to have expertise in. And I think the division of supervisory positions into an elementary position and a secondary position allows that person to focus more clearly, to do meetings on that level with their expertise, and also can make the office more efficient. People know where to call and whom to call. There's a clear delineation. This is a shift, and any shift requires accommodations and time, but I do think that pulling more services into the department and more clearly defining roles and responsibilities will make it a much more efficient running operation. Okay, the next. This is very clear to me. The current level of secretarial staffing is insufficient in that office. There really needs to be a third full-time secretary there. This is, quite frankly, a pay me now or a pay me later kind of a situation. You don't have the people doing the paperwork, you're going to suffer for it, and there's an awful lot of paperwork involved in that office. I think also there need to be very clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and there needs to be training such that every person understands how to fulfill those roles, such as stacks. I mean, Enrica and I were talking about it. It's okay to have one secretary doing stacks, which is a system for submitting for state aid, but everybody else needs to know how to do it, because if that one person's out sick, the operation can't stop. Okay. I think that it's time to, when I conducted the interviews, there were inconsistencies in the understanding and agreement in terms of services, both for special ed students and students who struggle. But more so the students who struggle, and I think that's one of the reasons I think it would be best served under a PPS model. It's important for the district to work on establishing these kinds of entrance and exit criteria. When do students go into some kind of remedial service? What level of service do they get? Is there a differentiation? Do all students who go into a remedial course get the same level of service? And if not, how do you differentiate? And the manuals can include, and I'm not suggesting this is exhaustive in any way, but timelines, forms, levels of service. Sometimes the creation of these manuals, and it's always my feeling that this should be done by committee, because the conversation that you have in creating them is really the power, is when we really talk about, well, who do we want to serve in these services, and at what level? They can also include services for children with social emotional difficulties, those returning from hospitalization and home instruction. And we know that the whole area of concussion is very much on the forefront these days. And it's best if the district have an understanding, a K through 12 understanding of how do you handle these cases.
So you would have a procedural manual just for concussions? Or
No,
for
you have a procedural manual for, it would fall under a support services manual. It sounds much more complicated than it is. I think when you get intelligent people into a room, they come up with these things fairly quickly. And most importantly, the people who are dealing with these kids on a day-to-day basis, because they know them, they know which procedures make sense and which don't. And I never believe in reinventing the wheel. Much of this stuff is available in neighboring districts free of charge, just for the asking. And that's the first place I would go. Why, start from scratch if somebody else has done the work? getting it started. In terms of the ICT program, as I said, these are very challenging times for classroom teachers, and figuring out how to meet the needs of students with disabilities and remediate their deficits while living within the Common Core, I think has been a challenge. And I know the district is working on it, and will continue to need to work on that. And here again, having one person in charge of remediation who has a background in working with kids who struggle, I think would be important. The next point. I know that it's always difficult. Boards shy away, in my experience, from discussion of any kind of a cap on the number of students. Nobody likes to get into that. The fact of the matter is there was a difference between the classes where there was a high number of students with disabilities within the ICT program. And it did affect the outcome for those kids. It's tricky. The district has tried to accommodate a number of things, keeping students in the same building over time. I don't think you can shy away from it, but I do think you have to have the difficult decision of, what's the limit in terms of the number of kids with disabilities in an ICT program.
What range are you talking?
Well, there was a big range. Look, the elephant in the middle of the room is always kids move in after the school year has started. And that creates a huge challenge. If you only have one section, you have no place else to put kids who need to be in that program. It became very obvious to me when, most of the time I was talking to both members of a team, which was interesting. They both wanted to meet with me together. It was a very different discussion when the numbers were lower. When the number of students with disabilities were at half of the class, it was a very different discussion. The tone of the discussion was different. And I can't attribute that to just purely personality or school. I think the numbers got to the breaking point in some instances. Fiscal management. I was one of those strange people who like doing stacks, but it's not difficult to do, but you need to learn how to do it. And I think there isn't a clear line of responsibility. There's not enough training for everyone in that office needs to know how to do stacks. They're very, very important. It's a very important part fiscally of the operation of that office. And it can't be dependent on solely one person. You could have one person doing it, but everybody needs to know how to do it. And really, it's not complicated. I'm old enough to know what STAC stands for. That's how long I've been in the, does anybody else know? System for Tracking and Accounting for Children. So a little bit of trivia. One of the things when I looked at the ABC program, I think that the district may want to think about is if the enrollment allows, you may want to consider looking at out-of-district students tuitioning into that program. I know that there has been interest on the part of other districts. Program, as I said, has quite a good reputation. You never want to put yourself in a position where you don't have enough room for your own students. But I think if the special ed office and the business office work together to establish a tuition rate, I would do that first, because then you know how many out-of-district students you need to support an additional section. It's kind of backwards planning. And it is one of those things where build it and they will come. Districts are always looking for really high-quality program for kids on that level of disability. So you've got it, you may want to use it. One of the things that came up predominantly at the elementary level was when we talked about response to intervention, I think that they felt very comfortable with their Tier 1 interventions that they've been using for students. Yeah. However, there were inconsistencies in terms of Level 2, the Tier 2 interventions. Where do we go when Tier 1 isn't working? And it is much more challenging. It's not an easy thing, but I think this needs to be a district-wide conversation, and perhaps opportunities to visit other districts, such as Pleasantville, which have very good programs, so that you can develop interventions across the district and more consistency across the district. One of the things that came up, I wasn't looking directly at it, but you really can't avoid it when you're looking at special ed as a remedial reading program. Staff couldn't describe for me consistent entrance and exit criteria. And, that doesn't mean they don't exist. It means that staff isn't aware of it. And that's as problematic as they're not existing. I think also there didn't seem to be a variation in terms of the levels of service. Well, not all kids going into remediation are at the same level and need the same level of intervention. I think if you develop levels of service, you'll have much more efficient. You're probably over-serving some kids who need intervention but not at the level of other kids. And progress monitoring needs to be done on those. You can't do exit criteria if you're not monitoring progress. And so that's a really important part of a remedial reading program. I think the district needs to continue to monitor the out-of-district placements. Clearly, the ABC program is, an example of taking a look at the placements and saying, we have enough. We have a large enough cohort to create our own program, and I would encourage the district to continue to do that. There may be other opportunities to either bring kids back, or if you're really looking at the preschool, preventing an out-of-district placement. Much harder to bring a student back than to prevent the placement out of the district in the first place. And then probably the most complicated recommendation has to do with monitoring achievement of students with disabilities. And I referred to before in terms of looking at, and I say this with a grain of salt, state test results. I say it because it gives you an opportunity to compare kids over various districts. Not a big lover of the state exams, but I think they have an opportunity to give us some information. And particularly, my recommendation would be to give teachers the opportunity to analyze at great depth the results for students with disabilities, particularly those who score like a high 2 or a low 3. These are students that are close. You're talking about, in some instances, 1 or 2 questions away. When we did this in Byram Hills, we found patterns that kids were struggling on questions that we didn't anticipate. We thought kids would have a harder time, students with disabilities, on the essays. It was the multiple choice questions that we found was separating students with disabilities with a 3 from students with disabilities with a 2. It was not the essays. And so we did a lot of work. So there are opportunities there, but you need to take a really in-depth look and look particularly at those kids in that very narrow corridor. At the high school level, I would say the same thing, except for me, I think I would encourage staff to take a look at students who score between 55 and 65 on the Regents exam. I think you've mentioned it, you're looking at your board policy on diplomas, and you know then that the diplomas are changing for students with disabilities. And one of the new criteria looks at actual scores on particularly the English Regents and the Math Regents. To simplify it, you score high enough on an English Regents and a Math Regents, it can pull up a low score on a Social Studies Regents. That's an oversimplification of it. But the scores themselves, so it's not good enough really to get a 65. You really got to do better. because you may need those extra points to pull up on another test. And it was one of the things when I did the analysis comparing Hendrick Hudson to other districts, it was very interesting at the high school level. Your students with disabilities, if you look at scoring 55 or above, students with disabilities did as well as the similar districts. Where there was a difference was that when you moved to 65. So there were more Hendrick Hudson students scoring between 55 and 65 than there were in comparable districts. And so you want to take those 55 to 65 group. That says to me, you can push those kids. Those kids can, you know, and the joke in Byram Hills was always, well, in the math regions, that's one question. And quite seriously, it can be. On that math regions, it could be one question. So I think, you know, it's going to be very important to really take a good hard look. Not so much the tests themselves, they're going to struggle on the test, but what can we learn overall from the tests? Are there areas that we can teach kids to do a better job at? We found in our district that the multiple choice was something there were other areas that we felt they didn't score well on in vocabulary. We weren't sure that we could effectuate too much of a change in that. We were able to pull scores up on the multiple choice. So I think that once you take a look at the outcomes for kids with disabilities in terms of, you know, you have to get through the Regents exams or you don't get a high school diploma. That's a reality. As much as we may not like testing, it's a reality of where we live. So I think that there are opportunities to improve the performance of kids with disabilities in the district. I don't think, you know, when you look at the comparable scores, everybody's scores at the elementary middle school level go like this. Well, they go like that because you can see when the state changes the test. Everybody's scores drop. My question to the teachers as you look at it, are your scores dropping more than other people's? And that's basically my presentation. Hope I haven't taken too long. I know.
Board questions? Seriously? Wow.
She's got 3 pages.
That's good.
I don't have 3 pages, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Just gotta lighten up a little bit.
Well, we'll get Marion started on her 3 pages. How's that?
The recommendations you've made, how long would it take, how would you recommend that we go about looking at them?
You know, to me, speed is not the answer. As I said before, a lot of these recommendations have to do with people sitting down and coming up. It really is the process that's the answer. You know, I didn't need to come up with recommendations for my teachers when we did task analysis of all the state tests we did at the middle school level. The process, they knew what they needed to do coming out of it. I think the process is the important point, and quite frankly, probably the slower you do it, the better, the more thoughtfully. I think it's important also, after you, for instance, come up with a procedural manual, to me, the thing that districts do wrong is they create a manual and then they never visit it again. I think you have to revisit it after a year and say, how did this work for us? Do we need to tweak it a little bit, update it? So there's no easy, some of these things can be done probably within a year. Some of these things, like an ICT program, I think you have to constantly be looking at that. Because your students with disabilities represent a small cohort by the grade level in the building. They're a large group of kids. They can differ from year to year. Some years you may have kids who struggle much more than others. And the program needs to be responsive to the kids sitting in front of them.
How do you build on the strengths that you noted? I mean, when we're looking at making these changes, how do you build on those strengths? Because you noted quite a few of them. You know,
Well, I think the strengths are the foundation of the program. You know, the willingness of staff, the interest of staff in providing a good program, in working hard on behalf of kids. You can't do anything without that. You have principals who are committed to educating everybody in their building. You can't make much progress if you don't have that. You know, so all of these strengths, really, many of them represent the foundation of a good program. And it's not to say that the program isn't good the way it is. Every program has the opportunity to move and grow. That's my that's my feeling.
You'd mentioned in the ICT classes that the classes where it was reaching 50% seemed stressed, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a general percentage where
Well,
there seems to be that
there are
break
teachers in the
point,
audience who
or does
might
it
pay
vary?
me for giving you a number. You know what? It would be very easy for me to give you a number, and I'm going to tell you it would be very inappropriate. That number has to come, it's your program, and it has to come from within the district. And quite frankly, the teachers who are in the program are the experts. You know, look, you can have one particularly challenging child with a very small group. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about overall the numbers. There seemed to be a break point at which teachers started saying, we can't get to everybody.
Mm-hmm. And that varies year to year and class to class?
It does, because, you know, it is different in the second grade
That's a
level than it
regular
might be
size
at the
classes,
fifth grade
too.
level.
We can't touch everybody.
Right, so it's not going to be a hard, firm number that we can say, this is going to be the cap for the class.
I think you need to have,
Right.
it's another example where you need to have that conversation. And my sense from the teachers was not, you know, we just want a cushy job, just give us less kids and we'll be fine. It was a frustration of not getting to everybody. And, you know, every cohort is different. That's why it would be very easy to answer it and very inappropriate to answer it. So I'm not trying to avoid it. I just think that's the work you have to do here in the district.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready?
I don't have that much. I really don't.
We just
No,
like to
Judy,
bust
thank
on
you
her.
for the insights, and we appreciate the work. I certainly appreciate the insight that PPS is everybody and special education is really everybody. It's not a separate department. It's all our students we're serving.
Right.
So I just had a question. The first question was on the recommendation for the 504s on making more building level support.
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly there's a lot of oversight needed for the
Right.
students with the 504 plans. And
Yeah.
right now, the guidance counselors are the case managers. So how would you really work that? We really need a lot more training and professional development, you know.
Right.
And so
The
that's
fact of the matter is, it's the people in the building that are implementing it anyway. If you want a good 504 plan, you develop it with the people who work with that child on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
I can sit and I can write the nicest 504 plans. You'll never be able to implement them because I don't know the kids. I really think the buildings, yes, they would need training on how to write the plan. They're not that complicated. It's not like an IEP.
But it's not that much different than what we're doing now with the guidance counselors are the case managers.
Right.
So how would it be different? That's
Well, it's my understanding that the annual reviews are not conducted by the guidance council. The annual reviews are conducted.
But wouldn't we want that expert, the oversight with the special
Not
education?
in a case-by-case basis, no. You know, in most districts, every district does it differently based on their staffing. But in Byram Hills, the school psychologist chaired the 504 reviews. The initials, we did differently for a variety of reasons. But the reviews were done by the school psychologist. He or she would do them with the guidance counselor or a social worker, a regular ed teacher, and the building principal where necessary. Because you're talking about accommodations within his or her building. And they're the experts on what they can do and what they can't do within their building.
As long as there's careful monitoring from the department, though, I think that's important.
Yeah, and it's not a total shift. You know, in Byram Hills, I went to the difficult meetings. I chaired the difficult meetings. You know, nobody's asking people to do anything that's above their comfort level. But I think when you're taking your two administrators in special education, you're taking them offline for half the year by locking them into all these meetings. you know, you have a base of information and resources that totally unavailable because they're locked in these meetings all year. So you're not talking about, you know, delivering special ed services. You're talking about regular ed accommodations. And the building is more than capable of managing that. And in most districts, it is handled in the building. So I'm not suggesting anything that's revolutionary.
And the next question was, do you think our continuum of is sufficient in our district? Do we need, this is something to analyze as far as what our student needs are, but as far as, say, in the high school, do we need more self-contained classes? Do you see a robust continuum for the size of our district that's sufficient?
You know, your district is very similar in size to Byram Hills, and it creates a challenge because it's, you know, it's kind of like in some instances there are too few kids, but there are enough kids to have a problem. I think you need to take a look at it every single year. You know, there were, in Byram Hills, because they're comparable size, I can use it as an example, we would fluctuate in and out of special class math at the high school level. Some years we had it, some years we didn't. And I think you almost, you know, it's unsettling. People want to know what they're doing, but it worked best that way. Do we need that section this year? I think you serve kids best when you do that. You know, it tends to be we put kids into the programs we have, not we create the programs the kids need. And that's a tough mindset to shift.
That makes sense.
Very, very hard to do. But again, that's an ongoing process.
And then the next question is related. You mentioned our secretarial staff, we need more support, but what about our supportive staff? Otherwise, we had a few cuts in the past years on social workers, for example. Do we have enough support for our students?
You know, I think you may want to look at what the social workers are doing and are they spending the majority of their time. Let me give you an example. One of the things your social workers do, which is terrific, is they go and observe the out-of-district students, which is wonderful. But then you come to the committee and only one person has seen that out-of-district student. You might want to consider giving a teacher, a school psychologist, somebody else on the committee the opportunity, thereby freeing up the social worker. That person doesn't have to see the child every year. It's a different use of the staff. I really didn't get into their staffing at you know, that's hard to get at. It didn't come up, but it doesn't mean it isn't there. You know, I mean, it did come up that there were very deep cuts across the board, and I think most districts experienced that. I'm not sure about the social workers.
And the psychologists, the same question, do you think?
You know, your psychologists do a lot of testing that in other districts it may be split between special educators may be doing educational testing and the psychologist is doing the psychological. In your district, the psychologists do both ends of it. So that uses up a lot of their time. It's a good time to take a look at it and see, you know, and it doesn't have to be the same at the elementary level as at the secondary level. The secondary level has guidance counselors, they perform a different function. So you may want to have different roles and responsibilities by level.
Okay, thank you. And I will be having further dialogues on this from the community, with the community, and we talked about goals and further insights. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? This is, there's an opportunity for audience comments, but I am aware that you will be meeting with SEPTA and the parent groups and the teachers
Yes.
as well, are you? So.
I'm looking at them because they're going to set it up for me.
There you go.
Yes.
If there's anything now, that's fine, but you will have another opportunity. So. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our next topic, which would be the discussion of a school resource officer here.
Yeah, back in February, we hosted a community drug forum. We had a number of panelists. And in the spirit of follow-up and follow-through, subsequent conversations have taken place with Linda Puglisi, the town supervisor, as well as the Westchester County Police. We were having discussions about whether or not the district wanted to entertain revisiting school resource officers. I know that this district had a school resource officer. I know that there was incentive money from the state that floated through the county or other municipalities, but there was some startup money. There was a way of supporting the position without paying 100% of the freight. The conversation I had with the town supervisor last week was that there are resources, financial resources available from the town for the county to have additional presence in and around the high school and the middle school. She has some money for special policing projects, and a special policing project could include an SRO-like activity at the high school, or in a police presence in all of the schools to perform the duties that a school resource officer would: prevention, education, those sort of things, but also be there on call should the need arise. The county is putting together a budget and really what the duties that the officer could perform. Right now at $20,000. The town has $20,000. The county said we'll put together an idea of what we can do. I think the long-range discussion to have is whether or not we want to revisit school resource officer or officers. And right now, as it stands, there is no state incentive money. If we were to engage in a contract with the county police, for an example, it doesn't have to be them, but as an example, if we engaged in a contract with the county police, we're talking around $125,000 for a school resource officer. When kids are here, the resource officer's here. It's a discussion we can have now. We can have it later throughout the summer. Enrique's looking at me and throwing me daggers because we just approved a budget that doesn't have a line item for school resource officers. So the timing isn't ideal, but I think to have a conversation around the philosophy of a school resource officer is something we should have and deliberate. And if our position is to go forward, it might be something that we seek external funding for, or that we plan in the 2015-16 budget. But I wanted to let everyone know where we were, because there was a lot of momentum and collaboration from the drug forum, and this was a tangible next step that we thought we could achieve. We can achieve part of it with $20,000, but if we want to revisit school resource officers, it would be a full district financial commitment. And with that, we can deliberate, or we can say, you know what, we'll talk about it next fall and plan for down the road. But that's our status.
Next fall.
Is there any way to contact Senator Schumer, Greg Ball, because they're grabbing the headlines right now, and they're talking about the epidemic in Putnam Valley and north of here, but the
And Lakeland's having a forum.
Yeah.
Shortly.
Is there any way
Tonight.
before we make that decision to reach out to those offices and see if there's any money that would be eligible for something like
You
this?
know, the problem there, Carson, is that we might get it 1 year, and what happens the second year? That's what I'm afraid when we get these kind of grants, that it's a 1-year grant.
It's not
then
sustainable.
How do we fund it?
But if we had an officer 1 year.
Obviously, if they can give us 1 year and we're committed to put it in the budget for the following year, at least we save $120,000. But the real question is, like Joe said, even if we get that money, are we going to be committed to put it the following year in the budget?
And directly, Carson, Linda Puglisi has written to even the Congress, so the folks you mentioned, and Rita Lowy and Schumer and a lot of folks saying there's an issue, it's been well documented, and more districts would participate if there was some startup money. I couldn't agree more with what Enrique's saying is, you have to have that money sort of escrowed for the just in case. We had a school resource officer, we had a number in Elmira, and when the state cut the funding mid-year, we had a discussion like this as a board to say, are we going to readjust our budget mid-year just to finish out the academic year? I'll follow up with her to see what her, what the funding looks like, if anyone was able to come through with some bullet aid or special funding, because that would be a priority up front.
Is
Try
there
to find other
demonstrated,
sources.
is there a demonstrated difference in outcomes in the in the building with an SRO?
Yeah,
Because we've got, right now, we've got 3 part-time or full-time security at the high school.
But security is different from SRO.
One was a former correctional officer.
They are great, but
So what's the
not
difference?
a police officer. I
Right.
think that makes the difference. They are great. I wouldn't change them for an SRO personally. But for me, the SRO would be an extra cost because
It'd be
it's a-
above and beyond what we already have.
Yes.
And what's the demonstrated outcome with an SRO in a building? Is there less crime?
Yeah,
Is there
don't-
less? Is there?
Yeah, I don't know what baseline data there are. You know, that would be, you know, my learning is
Mhm.
number of arrests when the SRO was here as opposed to not being here. I can
Well,
tell you
is
that
there,
what-
is there less crime, or is there
Well,
less
right,
this, or
right.
is there less that?
Yeah,
You know, less-
Other
I
school
I can have that
districts.
conversation. You know, the intent of the SRO is really the relationship building, community policing, you know, trust building, and trying to curb issues before they happen. I could tell you that on the instances we've had to work with the police, the state police have been pretty responsive, but it's not like having someone down the hall. So we can investigate alternate funding. As I said, the county is putting together sort of what a plan would look like for the rest of the year with the town of Cortland's $20,000. Something's better than nothing, but then again, you know, you get to a point of diminishing return. So we'll bring that back. But I just, you know, wanted to float the trial balloon that I think if we want to have the discussion of going back to that model, we should deliberate with some breadth and depth, and then make it a financial commitment for our budget going forward.
Right, and we'd like to see research, I think, or
Sure.
do research on what the outcomes are, like Charles says, and then, because we want to change our culture here. That's one of the things we want to do, and if an SRO could do it even for a year, and then even if we don't have it sustainable, it might be worth it. But
Yep.
it's-
Yep, so we'll look at
And there's a
research
real-
funding.
There's a real point to, you know, one of the things that we found, and we started our PBS programs and those kind of things, but character education makes a great deal of difference in the learning in the building. Now, if this is a part of that and helps build character, then that's one thing you would look at, but those are the kind of things, you know, is there lower, is there, with an SRO in the building, is there greater student achievement because kids can focus on studying, you know, those kind of things. That would be.
Yep, we'll gather that, we'll continue our talks with the town, and when there's a proposal, we'll share it.
But certainly people are willing to listen. Just,
Sure.
you know, again,
Yeah.
see the options
Yep,
and look
good.
into the various, the
Okay.
research and what that shows.
Good. All right.
Are there any other board comments, new business? Audience comments? Okay. That brings us to the end of our meeting. Just as a reminder, your kids haven't told you 100 times, there's a break next week. Unfortunately, though, school is open next Thursday on the 17th due to our loss in the snow days. And we also lost the following Monday. So next week, the kids are out, but they are, except for Thursday, and then they will start again on Monday, the 21st. Our next meeting is the 23rd, that's 2 weeks from tonight. And we will, at the end of the month, be having a meet and greet, not until after this board meeting. We'll have a meet and greet, you know, so that people can address any other questions regarding the budget or whatever happens to be on their minds. And as Enrique mentioned earlier, that there will be 2 spots on the board. And if anybody is interested, Roseanne, please give a phone call to Roseanne, and she can give you a an application, a petition that needs to be signed. But I would advocate doing it sooner rather than later because, exactly, there's a deadline and there's a break. So, other than that, thank you very much. And can I get a motion to close the meeting?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Thank you for coming and have a nice break.